Hello everyone. Marvin Winans, the legendary gospel singer, pastor, and founding member of the world-renowned musical family the Winans, has long been revered as one of the most influential figures in contemporary gospel music. Known for his silky voice, powerful sermons, and deep ties to faith-based communities, Winans built a legacy that many believed was untouchable. A man of the cloth who moved from choir stands to global stages, always preaching prosperity, faith, and integrity. But now, after years of whispers and controversy, that spotless reputation is being called into question, as reports swirl that Marvin Winans is finally being sued by his own church members over what's being called the $1,200 seed scandal. It's a story that digs into the complicated world of church finances, pastoral authority, and the fine line between faith and exploitation. For decades, Winans has been the pastor of Perfecting Church in Detroit, a sprawling megachurch that grew rapidly under his charismatic leadership. Thousands flocked to hear him preach, his sermons fiery, poetic, and often tied to promises of divine reward for sacrificial giving. The idea of planting a seed, a donation that symbolizes faith in God's blessing, has been a cornerstone of modern prosperity teaching, and Marvin Winans was one of its most eloquent advocates. He would tell his congregation that giving generously wasn't just charity, it was spiritual warfare, a transaction of faith that opened the heavens. But somewhere along the line, those teachings became blurred with personal ambition and questionable stewardship. According to new legal filings and insider testimony, several church members have now come forward claiming that they were misled into giving large seed offerings, some as high as $1,200 each, under the impression that their obedience would yield not only spiritual breakthroughs but tangible financial blessings, promises that they say were never fulfilled. The lawsuit, which reportedly names both Marvin Winans and Perfecting Church, accuses the pastor of manipulating congregants into giving money through emotional sermons, false assurances, and even prophetic language that preyed on their faith. Plaintiffs allege that the so-called $1,200 seed was marketed as a divine instruction, that those who gave it would see miracles, promotions, or healing within weeks. One former church member, in court documents, described feeling spiritually bullied into giving beyond her means, explaining that Pastor Winans would often frame giving as a test of faith, warning that hesitation reflected doubt in God's power. Others claim that special Seed Sundays were held, during which those who gave $1,200 were given exclusive prayer sessions or blessings from the pulpit, something critics now say blurred the lines between ministry and marketing. To understand the impact of this lawsuit, we have to look at the broader context of Winans' career and how he built a ministry empire. The Winans name carries tremendous weight in gospel circles, from BB and CC to the younger generation like Mario Winans. The family is synonymous with spiritual excellence and musical success. Marvin himself is a Grammy-winning artist, celebrated for songs like Draw Me Close and Let the Church Say Amen. His voice has led worship in arenas, and his sermons have been broadcast on national television. For years, Perfecting Church was seen as a beacon of modern ministry, attracting celebrities, athletes, and politicians alike. Even Oprah Winfrey and Whitney Houston have attended services under Winans' leadership at different points. But the glamour of celebrity faith often hides the financial machinery behind the curtain. And that's where the current controversy takes root. Church insiders claim that the $1,200 seed wasn't a one-time event, but part of a recurring fundraising pattern within Perfecting Church. Allegedly, these offerings were presented as necessary to fund church expansion projects, community outreach, and building maintenance, all noble causes. But records show little transparency on where the money actually went. Some former staffers claim that the church's financial system operated like a family business, with limited oversight and a small circle of trusted insiders controlling the accounts. Others say that as long as you were loyal to Pastor Winans, questions about money were off limits. Over time, this culture of silence and reverence allowed questionable practices to go unchecked. And now, with lawsuits surfacing, that culture is being challenged in court. What makes this situation even more shocking is Marvin Winans' public image as a man of moral authority. This is the same pastor who presided over Whitney Houston's iconic funeral in 2012, a man who stood at the center of the gospel world as a symbol of integrity. So, for fans and followers, hearing that he's facing legal action from his own congregation feels like a betrayal. Some longtime supporters are defending him, insisting the lawsuit is just an attack from bitter ex-members trying to tarnish his name, while others believe it's a wake-up call about accountability in the modern church. They argue that the seed faith message, which encourages people to give in expectation of blessings, has been exploited by too many high-profile pastors who live lavishly while their congregants struggle. And indeed, questions about Winans' lifestyle have circulated for years. From his luxury cars to his expansive real estate holdings, critics have asked whether the prosperity message was meant to empower believers or enrich the preacher. Reports claim that even as Perfecting Church faced financial shortfalls, Winans continued living comfortably, sometimes appearing at exclusive events or private gatherings that seemed far removed from the hardships his followers faced. Some of his former supporters have publicly expressed regret, saying they feel deceived, that their devotion was used to build an empire that served the pastor more than the people. Yet in typical fashion, Marvin Winans has remained mostly silent on the matter, offering only brief statements about trusting God to vindicate his servants. The implications of this lawsuit could reach far beyond Perfecting Church. If proven true, it could set a precedent for how financial accountability is enforced in religious organizations, especially those that rely heavily on emotional appeals for donations. Legal experts point out that while churches are generally protected from government interference under religious freedom laws, fraud is still fraud, even if it's wrapped in spiritual language. Prosecutors are reportedly examining whether the seed offerings were properly documented, whether funds were diverted for personal use, and whether any misleading statements were made that could constitute financial misconduct. The church's attorneys, however, are expected to argue that all donations were voluntary acts of faith, given without coercion or guarantee, a defense that has historically protected many prosperity preachers from legal consequences. But regardless of how the lawsuit unfolds, the damage to Marvin Winans' reputation is already significant. For a man whose name was once synonymous with excellence, faith, and moral leadership, this scandal represents a devastating fall from grace. Some fans are struggling to reconcile the preacher who once sang, "Let the church say Amen," with the man now accused of manipulating believers for money. Others see it as part of a larger reckoning within the Black church community, a demand for transparency and reform after decades of unchecked power among celebrity pastors. Social media has exploded with debates, with some calling Winans' accusers faithless and others saying this is exactly what accountability looks like. And then there's the emotional toll on the members who gave their last dime, believing they were sowing into God's work, only to feel abandoned and betrayed. Many of them say they're not angry at God, they're angry at the people who used his name to play on their trust. For them, the lawsuit isn't just about $1,200, it's about reclaiming dignity, truth, and faith from the hands of those they once idolized. Meanwhile, those close to Marvin Winans say the pastor feels deeply misunderstood, claiming he never forced anyone to give, and that he's being targeted for trying to maintain a ministry that's been under financial strain for years. As of now, the case is still developing, and the public may not know the full story for months. But one thing is clear. This lawsuit has reopened a painful national conversation about the intersection of faith and money, about how easily spirituality can be twisted into salesmanship. Marvin Winans, once the golden voice of gospel, now stands at a crossroads, either vindicated as a victim of false accusations or exposed as another fallen preacher who lost his way chasing the very riches he once preached against. Whatever the outcome, his story is a sobering reminder that even in the house of God, power, fame, and fortune can corrupt the purest of intentions, and that the people who give in faith deserve truth as much as they do miracles. Thanks for watching.